So who's part of a nonprofit? Who works with a nonprofit or a community organization or a church or a whatever, something like that? Who is a developer, designer, whatever, that wants to have them as clients? Cool. A little of both. Okay, cool. So the reason Dave asked me to help, which I'm sure he might change his mind now, is because there's not many people doing WordPress and Civi yet. And I jumped on it pretty quickly. And then the rest of the collective was like, well, if Dana's going to do that, we have no choice. And that's kind of how it happened. Did you want to say something? Oh, okay. So that's how Civi. I've been using Civi with Drupal, just the Civi side of it, with a couple Drupal pieces. And then once it started with WordPress, now I'm like, great, I can do more work. And there's a lot of things you can do. The New York Writers Coalition that I mentioned, they have a super tiny budget. Like, I don't know, it's like a ridiculous tiny budget. If a small organization like that can use Civi, they'll be able to do a lot more outreach, fundraising, get more people to their events. And so there's a lot, and they can do personal campaigns, which I didn't mention, where basically I can sign up to fundraise for your organization. Is that, what are they called, peer-to-peer fundraising? You guys know what I'm talking about? Okay, just checking. Can I speak up more? Should I grab this thing again? Lobo, does this bother you? I think it's going to bother me. Is that better? Going once, going twice, one, what? Yeah, going once, yeah. Can I whisper? I forgot what I was saying. Go closer. Peer-to-peer, right. So you can do everything, and I do agree, like having all your contacts in one place makes the world a lot easier. I mean, it makes your job a lot easier. But you also need to make sure you back up everything, right? So you don't lose everything. So this is basically our demo site in the back end. I have a few other things installed, but as you can see, CiviCRM comes in here as a plugin. You have to upload it by FTP or whatever version you get it onto the server with. And then you also have to set up a database. So you know how when you install WordPress, you need a MySQL username, password. So you need the same thing for Civi. You need to set up another MySQL username, password, and then you install it. And that's going to be part of the installation process, and then it activates it, right? And then because you do that, you get this other dashboard that shows up. Like Dave was saying, you can configure, each user is going to be able to configure their own dashboard with whatever stuff they do. So it's like little widgets that they can, I think you guys call dashlets, correct? They have little dashlets where you can just bring this information in. So if it's part of my job to go in here every day and do whatever, I can just see this information right away when I log in. So Civi becomes like an office, right? A back office that you can use for the everyday work. When you first install it, it automatically takes you over to this configuration checklist, and then basically says, do all these things to install, right? So you just go one by one. You say, you know, am I going to use more than one language or not? And then you just go through this whole process, and it'll basically help you set up Civi, the Civi side of things as you're installing it. Are there any questions so far on that? Yes, and Civi, whoever, yeah. And Civi, in my opinion, I don't think, you don't recommend it. It cannot be on shared hosting, right? It has to be on a larger.
No, it can be on shared hosting, but it should be a decent shared host.
Okay, so it has to be a decent shared host, whatever that means.
I wouldn't use a $6 month GoDaddy.
I wouldn't use GoDaddy in general, but it's just me. Is that recorded?
One big thing is that CiviCRM does require, it requires a new DB style MySQL database. I'm getting a little geeky, but basically that's a better way of running your database, your relational database, and some hosts don't support it, but most do.
Media Temple does not support it. I know this because I tried for somebody and it didn't work. I am not a themer, but yes, I can talk about it. What about responsive design? So, but so what's Civi? Let me show you here. So, well, I'll get to that. Can I get to that in a little bit? Okay, so remind me, but I will get to it, I promise. I love responsive design, even though I don't know how to do it. Did I answer your question? So hosting, don't go for $5 hosting, go for like 15 and above likely, or more, okay? If you're gonna use this. And one control panel, if you will, per Civi. Like don't put multiple Civis on one control panel. That's gonna kill your server, yes.
That's kind of my question. In terms of how you bring this in, if I'm using something along the lines of, say, a buddy press, which has multiple blocks, and if I also want to bring it into a bulletin board, and if I want a landing page, how well
Is that three separate sites you're talking about? Okay, so the question is, how is, well, plugin, so how does it tie into BuddyPress and the multiple, I guess, is there a multi-site then with multiple blogs?
the hypothetical is we won't get into it. Let's say I'm supporting multiple nonprofits. I'm trying to use here to have a database.
Well, okay, see, so how do I support multiple nonprofits with a central database? I tried this, and I would never recommend sharing a database with contacts, unless it's like 2 tiny or 3 tiny organizations, because CiviCRM is very hierarchical. So you have admins and you have all these levels of permissions, and then somebody's going to get mad at you and say, well, why can't I do this? And you'd be like, because I can't give you permission to that, because if I give you permission to that, you're going to see all this group's contacts. And so it gets very messy on the more kind of person-to-person level. It's not technologically messy, but it's hard to manage those relationships with people using it, because then they feel limited and you're limiting what they can see and access. So I personally would not share a Civi. I would put a Civi per organization and figure out a way they can share data outside of that if they want to share data. That's my personal experience. If somebody else has a different...
So there are folks that do multi-site solutions.
But that's multi-site in WordPress is different than multi-site in Civi.
Where they're basically running multi-organization pieces of data, and they use Civi has some internal functionality that allow you to set up stuff so that basically these users can only see this set of contacts, these users can only see that set of contacts. It's definitely complicated, and the folks who do it best actually use some additional programming using one of our biggest extension, using the hook system that would allow you to create the hook system to light up the data based on some properties of the content. So, for instance, political parties that are using Civi will do that by state of properties. They want to talk about it.
Actually, can I plug? I would love to see federated groups. Can we federate groups? That'd be great.
Groups? Yeah, let's go groups. I prefer groups.
So this is how I think about Civi. Contacts is where you have your contact. So I believe contacts get organized into groups, right? So I set up a group for a newsletter, and I set up a group of donors, and I set up a group of, anything you can think of. And then from there you see the contacts of that group, and I could be part of 10 groups, right? I can be part of 5 groups. But if I could share that group, that's basically what you're asking. As far as I know, it doesn't. Can you do that?
Yeah, using access control.
Access with one Civi though. I can't share. They'd have to access to the same Civi.
Within Civi, you can say, these people can see this group, these people can see that group.
Yeah. I have tried it. I guess it depends on the organization. I would hesitate to share a Civi with more than one organization for the personal animosity that might come out of everything. Not because of the technical. So he mentioned real quickly, there are permissions within Civi. So I personally, in the WordPress world, I love Justin Tadlock. You guys like Justin Tadlock? You gotta, yes, thank you. He's an awesome developer. But he has a plugin called Members. And the Members plugin gives you ways to manage roles within WordPress, right? And Civi plugs in their roles here. So if you go to WordPress access control, you can say, I want an editor, an author, and whoever to be able to see XYZ within Civi. And then if I have members installed here, if I go into members and I look at the roles, I can also see what they can do on the WordPress side of things. And some of that Civi stuff is brought in here, right? So access control to whatever they can do. So it ties in the permissions pretty cool. That is relatively new in the last upgrade. But I want to back up a little bit. So here is, hang on. Where's my donate page when I need it? Here we go. So my donate page, right? So CiviCRM, I said, puts this little button in here, and this button pops up, and it says, what do I want to put into my WordPress page? And then I have these options right now. I can put a donate page, an event page, or a user dashboard, and I'll show you all three of them. But for the event page, for example, you have an option to choose. Do I want the whole event, mean the description, the location of the event, or do I just want the registration page, which is just the form that you fill out if it's a paid event, any kind of questions you want to ask the people who are RSVPing. And then that puts it into the site. And I'm going to go to the front end now to show you. Oh, how do I right mouse click on a Mac? How do I right mouse click? You do what? So I have this calendar, which is a WordPress plugin, right? That gives me a calendar, a post type of a calendar. And then I have my calendar here, and now I have this event, which is still all WordPress, right? Up until now. And then at the bottom here, if I scroll down, I said, well, if you come to this event, it's $75, and please fill out all this information. And this part at the bottom is all Civi, right? So now all this information that I'm going to capture from the people is going to go into Civi, which is cool because then you go into Civi, and if I go to my events here, I'm going to see my events that I've created, and I can go see my participants. Oops, sorry. And who's registered, who's no-show, and I can go see all that information on here, right? And then it says I've registered many times, right? So it shows me that. So anything that you want to do that is going to require my name or my email outside of my username and password with WordPress, I build into Civi, so that information is all saved in one place, and the people that are running the nonprofit or doing their adminning can go run all the reports and do everything they need from an organizational standpoint. Does that make sense? Cool. I don't know, is there any question specific? Is there a focus that you guys, I mean, I can just go into detail about events, donors, like specific parts of it now if you want. People, okay. So again, I go around groups, right? So I think I'm a plugin person, right, with WordPress. So I think about how do you organize information and then put the pieces in around that, right? So you need a group before you go into anything else, right? So if I have my newsletter group, then I go see any contacts I have with this group. It shows you all my contacts in here. There's two things, there's two parts. So whenever you go into the list of contacts with a group, there is this, there's checkboxes on the left here, right? I can check things off, or I can say check everybody off. And then there's all these things you can do with that list of contacts, right? So if I want to send everybody print mailing labels, I want to, add them to a group, I can use this drop down to apply an action to this group. Does that make sense?
So when someone, I think you can belong to multiple groups, so it doesn't like it's around our group.
Groups are like a category in WordPress. That's how I think about it. Like, yeah.
So even though you don't like the idea of sharing that information, that person by default may be separate.
Yeah. Yeah, if I am limited to my permission only lets me see one group, I don't know what other groups are part of, which is fine. It's just it's just a human interaction thing. So this is helpful for like if you do any kinds of mailings, you want to do any exporting of this information, you can use this drop-down action. The other thing you can do is just kind of the screenshot that Dave showed, and I will. Oh, jeez. How does this work? I'm just going to use this because here I have this is like the core of Civi, I believe. So this is a contact. In this case, there's three kinds of contacts in Civi. There's an individual contact, an organizational contact, and a household contact. I rarely use household, so you have to explain to me. But I do use organizational and individual, right? So every person has all these tabs. It tells me if I've contributed, which I haven't clearly. I can click on this tab and I will be able to see anything I've done. Or if I received a check, I'll go put the information in about the check I received and plug that in, and then now it shows up in this person's profile. So everything with Civi actually is built around the contact. If I've referred or introduced 3 or 4 people to organizations, they would appear under relationships. And any people that I know, if I receive emails, they appear under activities. If I went to any events, they would show up under events. Does that make sense?
So for the individual, the key in the database is actually their unique
email address. Yep.
What about manual data entry? Some organizations have some people who actually don't have a computer. Do I just make up an email?
You don't have to have an email. You can create a contact with just the first and last name.
Yeah.
And then actually is
An ID number, yeah.
That page is a little confusing because she doesn't have her data, but for most people we have their name in the database, and you actually search by your name. Yeah, that's actually much more common.
This is my dummy data demo. But when you search, anyway, I'll go to that next. Yeah, did that answer your question? Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Now I have a list of people who I will get up. I have notes about each person. And like if I need to call this person, I need to refer back. I can scan and see and say, oh, so this is the last conversation we had. Here's some notes I made. I want to have more notes. And the other thing that would be nice is if there's any connection between this person about to call and maybe someone else I know, like we contact them, say, oh, you used to work at so-and-so foundation. Well, I was just on the phone with that person as well.
Do you want to take this one or you want me to? Do you want him to come up here? Oh, sorry. He wants to know if it works like a regular CRM, where if he has a donor and he wants to keep notes of who when he's talked to him, who's talked to them, if he has any relationship with other people, et cetera. How many times they've donated before, et cetera, et cetera.
So Civi is really about relationships. So you can define as many kinds of relationships as you want, and that relationship tab up there is a place to go and see who else is related to that contact. And those relationships can be familiar relationships like spouse, parent-child, employer, volunteer for, any ways that that person is connected to somebody else in your database gets reflected in that relationship tab and is easy to look at. And then you might see there's a notes tab there too, where you can keep notes about that contact. Another way that people do it is that if they have a phone conversation, they actually record it as an activity. So activities is one of the core things in Civi, and the idea is to create a story of the engagement of that constituent with your organization. So the activities tab, which is currently covered up, but basically anytime that constituent interacts or that stakeholder interacts with your organization, it's recorded as an activity. So if they make a contribution, they go to a meetup, you have a phone call, you send them an email, they receive a bulk newsletter. Those are activities, and they actually get listed in the activities tab so that you kind of see the story. You see, okay, well, they got a newsletter on the 1st of April. Oh, look, they made a contribution on the 15th, and they came to a fundraising event yesterday. I mean, that all sort of shows up as a story around the constituent. So very deliberately done that way to spread.
Maybe this is part of the technical. I was a programmer, so I'm teaching about database issues. One of the problems I'm having right now is a lot of my volunteers don't know about relationships, that this person knows this person like that. So my thinking is, if I had this donor, and I had a tag word Pepsi, and I had another donor who had a tag for Pepsi. The system should be smarter to know, oh wait, these two tags are the same. I shouldn't pop up.
I think that's accurate. That's a more detailed programmatic question.
I mean, you could definitely do searches based on that.
But before I was going to show you searches and queries, which are, yeah. Huh? Yeah, it's like but.
I mean, I guess there are some tools in Civi that sort of relate to that, but I'm not sure I'm quite getting the workflow that you're looking for.
It's not obvious discovery. But that's cool. I mean, there's enough folks that can write programming.
Okay, cool.
So I just wanted to follow up on one thing, and then I'll do the reason I had this good old action button, because this is my favorite button in Civi, is that as staff or people involved with an organization, volunteers, whatnot, this is how you would that you go into the contact and just say use action. I called them, add a note. I email them from here, so it archives the email, even if it's not a mass email. It's a one-on-one email, it'll archive it. So it's kind of, this is an important button for just archiving data and teaching like people how to use Civi. Is just say, find the contact, go into that contact, click on actions and record whatever you just did. So yeah, it's your question.
So going back up to 30,000 feet.
Okay.
We develop websites for politicians.
Okay.
So they have donors and constituents that get the PR message.
Yep.
And they have staff and the politician himself that wants to look at the site. The staff and the politician all go to the admin menus,
Yep.
or is there a web interface for them?
No, I think, but would all be from this dashboard back here. So you can limit, like this is a full admin, right? The full admin can see all those tabs at the top, but if you only want them to see events and not contributions, you can limit it so they can only see events and not contributions. But it would still come in through the WordPress dashboard to CiviCRM. I mean, you can custom it, but I don't know, that's a lot of work. New York, I know New York State, which I am in the Civi database in New York State. It's a custom Civi dashboard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's another option. There's a interface builder that we have called Profiles. It allows you to create front-end facing simple search forms and input and enter. So some people who are doing what you're talking about with the limit what the interface is. This is very rich interface. You can use that to expose that and expose the selected subset of some
Here, this is a very small example. But basically there's a search field at the top, and below is would be a list of all the contacts in that group, right? And if I say I want to see anybody, for the last name Skallman or whatever, it's going to limit. It should take the other one off and just keep me, right? So you can do that on the front end. It takes some setup and configuration, which I will cover on Friday in detail because I love profiles, but they can be complex. There was somebody over here first, I think, right? Did I miss? Yes. Send email. Okay.
Is there a way to see emails that come in so that you can follow conversations?
Dave, is that existent? Can Civi receive emails?
Can you repeat the question?
Can Civi receive emails and see a conversation, basically follow a conversation flow?
Yeah, there's a way to configure an inbound email processor so that it becomes part of the activity flow that you're seeing.
So yes. Find Dave afterwards. Okay, well then we're, okay.
Yes, I just had a question about how you would go about customizing the appearance of this form. I suppose you would do it the same way you would customize a WordPress theme?
There's two ways to do that. You want me to show you my slides? I'm getting ahead of myself here. How does this get big? Okay, so how does this, okay. So CiviCRM in the back, and I can show you where it is. In the back end, you can say, don't use Civi CSS, use WordPress CSS, and you tell what CSS file to use. And basically it wipes out all Civi CSS, which for dashboard purposes, I am not a fan of. But some people might want to do a custom dashboard, right? For just theming wise, if you pull these 2 lines of code, which I'm just this quick, I won't go into detail, and you put it into the functions file of your theme, and you put something like this in your functions theme file, it'll basically on the front end erase any Civi CSS, so it looks more like this. Where's my, like this, we wiped out all CSS on the front end, because I mean, Civi's awesome, but it's style-wise, WordPress themes do better for styling and theming, correct? So that's one way you could do that for theming. But on the dashboard, I don't mess, I just leave the dashboard as is.
Dashboard being
The back end. Because it's too, like if I wanted to customize all that, that would take so much work. And I'm too lazy for that. This is a responsive WordPress theme last I checked. How does this work? So if I resize this, it should totally just, right? So it doesn't. Because what we try to do, because we have a couple front-end developers that don't want to have to worry about Civi when it comes to styling, we just remove the styles from the front end, and they just continue doing WordPress theming like they know, and make the buttons and the forms look exactly like they want, and then nobody knows, like everybody's happy. It's like magic. So that's what we do. Don't know if everybody would do that, but that's what we do. Yes.
Suppose I'm using a shared host.
Uh-huh.
I don't want to keep any credit card information on there because I don't have access to the hardware. Is there a way that Civi can collect the money but connect to another party that does all the credit card processing?
Well, my favorite Civi extension. It's a payment gateway thing. That's not a Civi thing per se.
CiviCRM never stores credit cards.
Yeah.
Ever, ever, ever. No matter what payment processor plugin you're using with Civi, it does never stores credit cards.
But for hosting purposes, though, I think you might have to be PCI compliant.
So Civi offers built-in integration with PayPal Standard, PayPal Pro,
Authorize.net.
Authorize.net, Payflow, and a bunch of others. It depends on which one you're using. If you're using one of them where you actually are at least collecting input of credit card information on your website, you should be PCI compliant and have SSL. But there are options like Google Checkout and PayPal Standard where they go to the PayPal site or the Google site before they actually put credit card information in, and then you're completely off the hook. But that is a fully integrated flow into Civi. They start at Civi, they get taken to PayPal, they get returned to Civi, and PayPal sends Civi back the information about the completed contribution, all automatic.
The one I've been using, just because I like it, is Stripe. Stripe is pretty cool. But it's an extension that somebody built for Civi, and then I put it in, and then you still have to, I recommend SSL. I don't think you need it per se, but you should. But all that information stays on Stripe. It doesn't stay on your database, on Civi. Yes?
What about email campaign services like MailChimp and Constant Contact, which provide me with statistics and stuff?
So mailings. There's a few things with mailings. Well, personally, from a biased personal perspective, I like to have my data with where I know it is, which is my server or whatever, so I don't usually use. However, the UI, the interface is not MailChimp. Like this is not MailChimp, and MailChimp is great for mailings, correct, right? There is one extension, I believe, that ties into MailChimp if you want to go that route, but CiviCRM lets you send emails. It's also on here. So it is reports. So Civi, didn't you guys, am I on the wrong version? I thought you guys shrunk this up. There's mail reports. So you can have click-through reports and everything. So it tracks anything that they forwarded, if they emailed it, what they clicked on. So you can do all the kind of statistics and stuff on here. You don't need to have a third party. The thing about the mailing interface is it's basically like adding a WordPress post. So you go to WordPress, you have a title, and you have a content area with a WYSIWYG. That's how you set up a mail with CiviCRM. So what we do is we build a HTML header and HTML footer that wraps around the content. So you have your logo at the top, and you have unsubscribe and anything you want at the bottom, maybe your Facebook links or whatnot. And then you just put your content in the middle, and then everything else wraps around it. Looks beautiful. Give you a sample.
There are people that just love MailChimp and don't want to.
That's
Email list is really cool, and for those people, basically, they have their mailing list here, and they export to MailChimp and do the mailing. There are some sync issues, though. You got to make sure that opt-outs get before you.
There you go.
So the opt-in, that would be a group like.
So yeah, exactly. Create a mailing group, you can have multiple groups, and you can make those groups a mailing list. I can show you. But this is a sample of a newsletter with Civi, where the content is the middle part, and we just build out the bottom and top, so it wraps around your. So it's like putting a WordPress post in, but it doesn't have any of the fancy stuff. So if you're looking for that, I can't compete with MailChimp. Now with groups, let me show you that actually before. I'm going to show you searches too. But with a group, when you create a new group, it's pretty easy. You give it a name, you give it a description, but then it asks you, do you want it to be a mailing list? And if you want it to be a mailing list, that means it automatically shows up. And when you're creating a mail, you say, who do you want to mail it to? And it asks you what groups you want to mail it to. So you just have to say mailing list for it to, it's one way. It's not a mailing, it's not like return emails, right? It's just one way communication, like a newsletter. Does that make sense? The other cool feature, I think, is the searches. Like you can do a ton. Like, I think this might come into your question about how can I get information and data. Like, they have this thing called smart groups, which are smart groups. So for example, if you want to have a list of a member directory list on your front page of your website, but you don't want to update it manually because somebody lapsed and didn't renew their membership, you just create a smart group saying if they have not renewed, or if they're not active, get them out of this group and they will no longer show up in the directory. Does that make sense? So you can do a whole ton of stuff like that with any criteria. I mean, a lot of the questions I get from people using Civi is like, I need to accomplish this, and then I go see how their contacts are organized, what questions they're asking, and basically create a search or report, and then they do whatever they need to do from there. It's a whole administration. I mean, this is a dashboard. This is an office, right? This just gives you a whole office space that everybody can work with. Did anybody else have questions? Yes.
So if someone appears in more than one, and you're sending out a mailing list, is it smart enough to get them?
Yes. Two things I recommend. Well, one thing I recommend. You see that little checkbox there that says remove duplicate emails? Please always check that off. It doesn't hurt. because you're not going to lose, a mailing is not going to go out, but I won't get it twice. And then you can also say, I want people to be emailed in this group, but not in this group. So I might be in 2 groups, and you could exclude me by saying, I don't want to get this email because I want you to exclude me for whatever reason. So you can do a bunch of stuff like that. And then if you go to mailings with the searches, you can do a search and say, I want to email everybody that went to the meetup today, next month, and you can just do a search and then send everybody an email. So there's a bunch of stuff like that you can do. It's pretty cool. Basically, anything contact related, you got to use Civi. Because I would set up like, I've tested every membership plugin WordPress has, I think. I'm pretty sure I have. Premium and free. I've tested every event plugin. I've tested them all. And they work to a certain extent, but it doesn't organize the data in the way that the data gets organized here. Yes? Members is for permissions. For 2 things. Thank you for that. That's a good point. So members is 2 things for me. So I have it here. Is this not clicking? What's happening here? Leave this page. So here I have 2 Civi plugins. There's only one Civi WordPress plugin so far that I know of. And it's the Civi Member Sync, which is genius if you have a membership, because it says, if somebody pays for membership in Civi, create them a user role in WordPress automatically. And if they don't renew, make them a subscriber afterwards. Like, it does that whole process for you, which is pretty cool. So members right here is, which you should use, I highly recommend. It does 2 things. It does one, it says to me here, it gives me these 2 new menus where I have roles, and I can control roles. And then when I go into pages, at the bottom down here, and post and any really content type, I get these permissions. I can limit this page so nobody can see. I only want editors to see this page, or I only want subscribers to see this page. And that's what I do. So if I put a Civi directory in a page, as far as I know, I cannot limit, in the permissions I tested, I could not limit, there were certain limitations on what I could do from who could see what parts of the profile. And so if I just completely lock out the whole page so only logged in users can see it, it doesn't really matter so much what the Civi site is, unless they know the whole URL, which they won't.
A lot of organizations use this feature both here and in Drupal to create member-only content, paid member-only content. And because Civi has this membership management piece that allows you to create all these different kinds of membership types with different durations that have self-service payment and self-service renewal functionality, and the way that then integrates with this content control creates a very powerful solution.
Wait, I was wondering about the, I just bought a landing page that has some of the similar functions, but nowhere near the kind of organization of this. So
Yeah, I mean,
figure out where the 2, what the is and what the other.
so that's what I think content, right? So contact, I always use Civi, other than the username and password that you need for WordPress, right? And everything else is content. So if I need an event calendar, that is within WordPress, right? But I'm going to do the registration through Civi. Does that make sense? So contact information all goes into Civi.
Right, so the landing page would just have a Civi
Form.
and that would be it.
Yep. Yep. So I'll show you, but this, I mean, this is like an event. This is a member page where you just have your membership levels and people pay and renew or whatever. And then by doing this, it automatically creates a username in WordPress and password. And then you just have if you have member-only content, you use the members. I mean, there's other plugins. Role Scoper, right? That's a, I forget them. There's a few other plugins. I just use members because I like Justin Tadlock. That's just why I use, and it's really good. But if there's other ones you prefer, you can use those too, right? So does that answer your question a little bit?
I think so. It's all like play to put together.
For anything you do with these 2 tools, I mean, I would never, like, so when somebody asks me I need membership, I don't say, oh, we're using Civi. I say, what do you need to accomplish, and blah, 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 and then I get more information. And then once I realize they're going to use at least 2 things Civi offers, like events, and they're going to need donations, I will likely go that route. because it's going to make my job easier later on, and it's going to give them so much more stuff they can do later on. Does that make sense? I don't mention Civi them initially, because all they wanted is a website with membership. And then once I get from there, I kind of build up the other pieces.
In terms of tracking, like donations, do you have a mechanism there for tracking anything other than money?
Anything other than? Anything other than money. Well, I mean, it tracks anybody attending events. It tracks your members. It tracks relationships with these people.
Right, but let's say I've got like the people that are here, right? And I want to know if they're here for the entire event or not.
I mean, but there's always going to be manual input, right? I don't believe there's any automated solutions for, like, nothing works 100% automatically, as much as we would like to with all our apps. Where's my phone? With all our apps that do everything we need.
But like, it looks like you're set up exclusively for cash donations, but I can see nonprofits where the actual labor is.
No, you can set it up for like in-kind donations and other. It doesn't have to be money. It could be time. It could be anything.
Material goods, whatever.
Yep. So like these profiles in CiviCRM are basically forms. So if you ever use Gravity Forms or any other form things, not exactly the same in the sense of how it works, but it is basically builds a form out, right? So if you go into, let me just use the ones that come default here, like name and address. Basically, you're just building out a form. You say add a field, and then you choose, like the fields are linked to different parts of Civi, right? So I want to have a field that's linked to whatever part of Civi, and I put that into the form, and that form I can put onto the front of my website, and I can capture that data. I can do surveys, I can do petitions, you can do all that information, right? So it's a lot easier to do it that way. The other thing, which I don't know, which I think is good, is that there's custom fields, right? So my organization needs are very different than somebody else's organization's needs, and I have specific questions that I might want to ask a specific community, right? So you can create as many custom fields as you want. There's no limits, like there's no like only 10 new custom fields or only 3 people can, like, does anybody use, I don't know, eTapestry, Razor's Edge, anything else, any of those other nonprofit CRMs? Nobody? You use them all? They usually cost a lot of money, and they usually tell you you pay per user. You can get 3 people to access the database for whatever per month. This you can give anybody access to as long as you have the right server settings, right? There's no limitations when it comes to who can access it, besides the ones you put on. Does that make sense? So I mean, that's why like the $10 million organization or whatever can have these huge databases of contacts, and they just have millions and millions of people in contacts in their database, and there's no limit to it. Pretty cool. But it also means that my good old New York Writers Coalition, who have like basically no money, can set up a Civi, and now they can follow up with people and send letters and do a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, I know they're using it very actively for fundraising. So it's pretty cool that I have, like, with, you know, like $2,500 basically, they can get this set up for them, and I mean, one-time setup costs, if that. I mean, it varies. It varies on the scope, but.
So let's say I volunteer for a nonprofit with using Salesforce. Say I want to move over to the city. Is that process challenging?
Oh. Has anybody ever migrated data? Even from WordPress to WordPress sometimes? Or MySQL to MySQL? Okay. So yes, it's easy, yes and no. But Civi does have a bunch of imports. So you can import contacts. You have to have clean data. So your spreadsheet, your CSV file has to be clean, right? So you have duplicates. So you can import contacts. You can import contributions. Where is the import? It's here somewhere. There you go. Import contributions. You can import participants to events. So, for everything. So when I go to a custom field, let me just show you how you do this. Let me just go into this. You can create groups of custom fields. So this is a group of custom fields, and I create a custom field. There's a few choices I have in reference to like what kind of custom field do I want, and how it appears, right? So you have many options like that, but also Let me actually go back. I have to go back to show you this. The set, like a set is like a group of custom fields. That custom fields ask you where do you want this to appear. So I want these custom fields to only appear with campaigns, or only appear with donations, or only appear. So you can create custom fields for like anything in the world you want. The one I like, well, I like a lot of things in here. I'm a data person. Can you tell me? No. Organizing data. My house does not look as good as my computer does, by any means. There's this autocomplete select. Let me do a preview here. This is one of those fields that basically says, I think I'm in here. So basically, I start typing the word in, and it drops down. So if you have a group, like we're setting up a database right now with Civi. That's going to be a pretty, it has a directory of schools, and they want to know what programs are at what schools. And so we have an autocomplete field, so when they fill out the form, they say, what school are you? And if it already is in the database, it just plugs, it doesn't create a new school, it just puts in the information for that school. So it's got a lot of cool things you can do like that. Civi takes a long time to learn, so don't take it lightly. I've been using it for at least, dabbling in it for 5 years. Last year and a half, it's been a lot more.
Is there a process to copy a Civi from one WordPress site to another, or would this be done as part of just WordPress migration? Like if you're using like a Pepper Body to deploy a WordPress site.
So is this like development to live, or is this from development to live? He's asking how do you go from one Civi move Civi from one place to another? Yeah. That's a database migration though, isn't it? It's not you just have to, you know how in the WP config file you have your username and password for the database? So Civi has a CiviCRM settings file that has the username and password for the database. So it's a MySQL.
Okay, so you have to copy the database over manually.
If you're moving to a new database, or just repoint the settings file to the existing database, if the database itself is not moving. Does that make sense? Yeah. No? Yes?
What was that demographics area? Was it
Demographics?
or was it demographics part of
That was your side? Oh, and it oh, okay. An individual? Yeah. Okay. Let me go into, I'm going to go into my groups. And I don't know, these are not real contacts, so don't, although I am a contact. Can I go to myself? Is anything you can go customize and change, right? So demographics, gender options, right? If you are more diverse and fluid, if you will, in your gender analysis, you can add as many gender options you want here, right? So there's no limitations. Civi does not have a gender or limit gender in any way. Yeah. States, zip code. Another thing you can do, which I think is pretty cool, let me show you. This one I learned pretty recently. I didn't know this. And maybe it's not going to work here because it's a demo. Waiting for Civi. But I can go map my contacts. It's pretty cool. It's not going to work. I don't have geocoding enabled. But basically, if you want to see a group of contacts in a geolocation, it puts the Google map or the OpenStreetMap, and it shows you all the contacts in a given area. It's pretty cool. You had your question. Or raise your hand. No? I would say if you're going to learn Civi is a great tool to offer clients, I believe. If you're going to learn it, but do it like, tackle like donations first. Like do it one thing at a time, because the whole thing it's a very huge database. Oh, that is a great resource actually. And Oh, it's not here? So they have this awesome resource, and if you're the user admin or developer guide, right? So, but the user admin basically is like a whole guide of how to use Civi, right? So you can just go through and read the whole thing. It's very well documented. If you have questions, we have the forums. We have the IRC channels. I am actually trying to participate more actively in IRC now. So you can ask questions there.
Upgrades were sort of frequent, so the upgrade process will be a lot
more. I can show. So. No, this isn't. So this is not a WordPress plugin. I just need you guys to understand that. This is two applications merging together. And so you're gonna go, like you download, when you install it, you're gonna download the whole file, FTP it up again. In their documentation, it says put this URL in after WP admin. You put that in and you'll watch it'll say upgrading right now. And you'll see the little line going upgrading. And it's it's relatively easy. But just like I recommend with WordPress, I never upgrade WordPress until, like, 3.6 is coming out like any day now, right? I don't upgrade my client sites until 3.6.1 or 3.6.2 because there's always something that is not seen. And I do the same with Civi. I don't upgrade for clients until 0.1 or 0.2 after the big release. Because things will get caught that doesn't affect the live client site, and I get less phone calls saying, hey, why is this not working? And so I do that for both of them.
So as a big developer, I'm sure WordPress supports you when they're about to do their upgrade. Should you worry about
Twice a year? Twice a year. Twice a year. So WordPress, I think, has 2 or 3 updates a year. Civi has 2 updates a year, minimum. No. So you just download it. I mean, if you work with a developer or a company that does it for you, it's part of the support maintenance, I would guess. Like, we have support maintenance, but it doesn't. If you do it yourself, it doesn't cost anything. I mean, CiviCRM is open source. There's no licensing. There's no. It's kind of like what? It's open source, yeah. You can download it. If you go to civi.org and just download it.
So it's one huge package, so if I wind up not using parts of it, that's just the way it is.
No, but let me show you though. It is modular. Good question. So CiviCRM is organized by components. I always forget the words. Components. And so see how it says over here on the left? There's 3 components not enabled, and on the right, or whatever, that side. So I just remove whatever I don't want. So if I am not using membership, for example, if I just disable that and I hit save now, the membership button at the top that says is gone, right? It no longer appears. So you can just disable. Yeah.
You can bring it back by doing the same process.
Yeah.
What about adding stuff later? Is that problematic?
No. Yep, you just go here. These are all the settings for Civi, by the way. Look at that. There's a lot.
It's all there.
It's all there. You show it or hide it if you want.
And if I want to put it back, I just go to member here, enable, save, and that membership menu will appear at the top again. So. It's like a category. It's a category. Yeah, campaign is like a category in WordPress, if you're thinking WordPress terms. You categorize your blog post by XYZ. You can have a campaign that you have emails going out about, you have a fundraiser about that campaign, you have an event for that campaign. It's marketing. And then you can run reports, because if you give it that campaign, you say, I want to know everything that happened for that campaign, and it'll create reports. So it's basically an office. If you want a back office for a nonprofit, civic organization, NGO, volunteer organization, you set this up, everybody uses it, it's great. I mean, there's a learning curve. You have to train people how to use it, but you can do a ton. So I don't know if that was helpful. I hope it was. Here. You can email me if they're good questions. No. That was a joke. I hope that was recorded, not recorded. So you can just email me. That's my email, Dane@Tadpole. I am not in the Bay Area, though I might become bi-coastal or move here. You never know. But you can email me there, and I can help answer questions. If you go to the Civi stuff, if you use their like WordPress has the support forums and stuff, Civi has the support forums. So just go to those spaces and ask questions. And that's what we got.